was almost a decade ago. I was in the Adirondack Mountains for a hiking and skiing trip. I rented an Airbnb cabin for the week, kind of nestled in its own private section of woods, perfect for skiers and hikers. Though there was news of an incoming blizzard all of a sudden one day that week. I wasn't just going to cut my trip 3 days short though, and I already paid for it. I think it was a Friday, I don't remember, but I woke up that morning to knocks at the front door of my cabin. I looked out the window in my bedroom, and I was greeted with nothing but white sheets of snow covering everything, with heavy snow still piling on. I looked to the front door, and there was this woman in a parka who looked rather distressed. I quickly threw on a change of clothes and opened the door. She was some 40-something-year-old woman. Her cheeks were red and she looked freezing. She asked, in I guess as polite way as possible, if she could seek shelter here until the storm blew over. I figured it was the gentleman thing to do, so I invited her in and told her to make herself comfortable while I heated up some coffee. She plopped herself down on the couch and asked if I lived here. I told her it was just an Airbnb, then asked where she was coming from. She said she also rented an Airbnb up here, but she got caught in the blizzard and couldn't find her way back. She said her name was Meredith. I handed her a cup of coffee, but she refused it and said she was really tired. Then she asked if she could just rest on the couch. I allowed it, though as I ate my breakfast, I can't lie, I felt really awkward. I didn't really know what to do after my breakfast. I didn't feel comfortable just hanging in the living room kitchen area, so I went back to my room to watch TV. The snow was really coming down outside, and the wind was so aggressive that the whistling shrieked through the windows. Not too long after, another knock at the door. I once again looked out the window. This time there was a man outside. I went to open the door, with Meredith now sitting up on the couch, asking who it was. I told her I don't know, then I opened the door. It was like deja vu because the man basically gave the same story, that he was caught in the blizzard and needed a place to stay. At this point, having already let Meredith in, I had to let him in too. I told him the same thing I told her, make yourself comfortable. He introduced himself as Mark. Meredith and Mark. They introduced themselves to each other as well, and they had a laugh at the fact that they were both in the same boat. Then they both kind of playfully praised me for letting them in. Meredith seemed more lively now, more open to conversation. So we talked about a bunch of random stuff, until there was nothing really left to talk about. The day dragged on into the night. It grew dark and cold inside the cabin, and the snow was showing no signs of receding. I offered them whatever food was in the fridge throughout the day. Unfortunately for me, it seemed it was approaching that time that I had to designate where they would be sleeping. But Meredith kind of did that for me. She asked if I would allow the two of them to stay here for the night. I had to say yes. So they both slept on the couches. I slept in my room, of course. I fell asleep rather easily, with the knowledge that my belongings were under my bed and couldn't be easily stolen by these two strangers. I'm usually a heavy sleeper, but this night I woke up to a loud thump. I sat up. The door to my bedroom was open, and the sound of the outside wind was incredibly loud. I discovered the front door to the cabin was open too, and neither Meredith nor Mark were on the couch. I went out to the porch for a second, just to look into the woods. There were fresh-looking footsteps leading into the snow, and I could see Meredith just standing out there in the snow, facing me, holding what looked to be my travel bag. I yelled at her to come back here, along with a few choice words. I ran to my room to get my boots. As I rushed to put the boots on while on the couch, I noticed my bedroom door was now shut. I 100% did not close that door. Was I about to open it? Hell no. Especially not after I heard footsteps on the other side of the door. I got my boots and coat on and ran to the front porch again. But now Meredith wasn't alone. Someone, a man, I couldn't tell if it was Mark or not, was standing next to her, holding her hand, and they were both facing the house. I didn't care about the bag anymore. I ran to my Jeep and drove through the 3 feet of snow. There had to be more than just those two people in the house that night, because someone else was in the bedroom. I was too nice. I let my guard down with 2 strangers, and I paid the price. I'm just happy they didn't kill me though. Somehow I got the vibe they were trying to do more than just rob me of my bag. My older brother and I used to love to play out in the snow. We live by the woods. I'm not giving my town or state or any other details of our location though. One night our parents let us go outside to play in the blizzard. We figured playing hide and seek would be fun since the footprints in the snow would create a new factor in the game. So I was the one hiding first. We were playing in the woods with flashlights. I turned mine off once I found a place to hide, just to not give away my location. I ducked down in the deep snow between two big trees. I tried covering my tracks in the snow, but I couldn't possibly get all of them. I saw my brother's flashlight in the distance, coming in my direction. He was definitely going to find me, so I ran in the dark deeper into the woods. I definitely lost him because I didn't see his light anymore, or maybe he turned it off. Also, we knew these woods, and I knew which direction I was going. I wasn't going to get lost. Eventually, as I kept walking though, I found another trail of footprints. They seemed like they were left there only a few minutes ago, so I started following them, expecting to find a deer at the end. As the footprints became more fresh, however, I started to realize they were boot prints, not animal footprints. This also meant I was getting closer to whoever just left these boot prints. I was thinking at first that it was my brother. Maybe he ran past me without me hearing it. I only thought that because I didn't see how or why anyone else would be out here in the middle of a blizzard. With my light still on, I noticed something black sticking out of this big pile of snow, which seemed to sit right next to the boot marks. I stopped and examined it, and brushed some of the snow off the object. I brushed enough snow off to realize it was a big black garbage bag. This didn't look good. I already smelled something foul in there. Garbage? That's what I was hoping for. I tried to find the opening of the bag, and eventually just gave up and tore the bag open with my nails. I gagged the instant I saw what was inside. A decomposing human body. When I say gagged, I'm talking coughing loudly and uncontrollably in shock and disgust, and I think that gave away my position to my brother, because pretty soon his light started shining on me. I turned to him, his light in my face, and made a hand motion signaling for him to run, like go home. Rightfully so, he was confused and kept approaching me, so I ran to him and told him to turn off his flashlight. I pointed at the bag and whispered what was inside. He didn't believe me, even after I begged him to just go home with me. He went to the bag to see for himself, and when he saw I wasn't lying, he put his hand over his mouth. As the older brother, he started guiding me and nudging me back to the house, trying not to make a sound. Though, as we moved, we kept looking back, thinking we heard footsteps in the snow behind us. We moved faster every time. He had to keep the flashlight on, otherwise it would be pitch black. Then, I think at the same time, we both looked back after hearing a footstep again, and saw about 50 feet away or so, there was someone standing there, right in the light of my brother's flashlight, watching. From there, we ran all the way back home. The man yelled something at us, but neither of us could make out what he said. We got back to the house 2 minutes later and told our parents, who called the police to report the dead body. The police came and asked us a bunch of questions, and they sent out a search team based on our description of the location. They didn't make us go back out there. The search turned up no results, but they resumed the next day in the daylight, which was when we were asked for assistance in retracing our steps. We did the best we could, but the body was never found. It wouldn't be much of a surprise if whoever was out there moved the body after realizing there were 2 witnesses. We were literally just little kids when this happened, and we were still being followed by possibly the person who hid that body there to begin with. I still wonder if we just narrowly escaped with our lives. It started on the night of the first snowstorm of the year. I was off the next day for work, so I was just relaxing in my bed watching a movie, drinking hot cocoa. All of a sudden, something hit my window that nearly gave me a heart attack. I looked at my window and saw the fresh mark of a snowball having just splattered over the glass. I opened the window to look outside, and I heard a kid's laughter. Well, that answered that. I closed the window again, and my attention shifted back to the movie. Not too long before, a second pow at the window, followed by the kid's laughter. This time I ignored it. I knew that by giving the kid a reaction, they would keep going. Apparently that worked, because no more snowballs were thrown at my window that night. The next night, though, it happened again, this time while I was asleep. I woke up to a much louder and more ferocious bang at the window from a snowball. I opened the window and took a look outside. Though it wasn't snowing anymore, I still couldn't see too far out onto the lawn, though I did hear the laughing of the kid again. It was a boy's laughter. It sounded like a 10-year-old. I yelled something out the window at him. I think it was a threat, but nothing too serious to be directed at a child. It didn't happen again that night. The next day, a lot of the snow had melted, but most of the ground was still covered in a white sheet. After turning off my light in my room, I lay awake, anticipating and dreading the sound of a snowball hitting the glass that would once again make me jump out of my skin. And just like clockwork, it happened. That goddamn kid was back. I was ready this time. I jumped out of bed and looked out the window. This time, I saw just for maybe half a second the back of a kid running away into the darkness. I threw on my shoes and coat and ran outside to find him. I found where his footsteps started at my window, and I followed them. I ran as fast as I could, trying to catch up to him. His footprints led me down a grass field until I reached a road. The footprints stopped at a big sycamore tree. Wrapped around it were 2 white bands of flowers. There was also a wooden cross planted in front of the tree. It was a memorial for a fatal car crash here. I double and then triple checked to see if the footsteps went any other direction, but they mysteriously stopped right there. I walked back home and went to bed, a bit disturbed. The next day I did some research and inquired with some locals, and I found out a mother and her son died in a car crash running into that tree. When I learned this, I got goosebumps, but I didn't want to find out how old the son was. I couldn't bring myself to do it. God forbid the son was around 10 years old. I'd forever be haunted by this, even more so than I already am. The next night, I thought I heard a child's laughter outside my window, but it may have just been my imagination running wild. I had to take sleeping pills for a whole month, just so that I wouldn't be awake terrified all night. I'm 30 years old, and I share a house with my sister. It's a 2-floor house, a mother-daughter house, meaning it has 2 kitchens. My sister takes the downstairs, I take the upstairs. My sister isn't home a lot because she often stays with her boyfriend who lives 20 miles away. Like I said, I'm 30. I shouldn't let being home alone ever freak me out. But, admittedly, sometimes it does. This happened on a night that I was home alone in my living room watching a scary movie. My part of the house is an open layout, so the living room, dining room, and kitchen are all one big space. My couch is in the middle of the space, so as I watch TV on the couch, my back is to a large part of the room behind me. So for those a little more easily spooked, it wouldn't be the most comfortable place to be sitting alone watching a scary movie. I'll admit, as I watched in the dark room with nothing but the light from the TV to cancel the darkness of the room, I found myself glancing over my shoulder a lot. I like to think I'm not the only 30-year-old male that does that. But anyway, after the movie, I brushed my teeth, turned off all the lights in the house, then went to sleep. My sleep lasted for about 2 hours. I woke up around 1 a.m., and I wasn't sure why I woke up at first. Then I heard a voice downstairs. It sounded like my sister. It sounded like she was inside the house, so it's not like she was calling for me to open the door. But still, I knew it was my sister's voice. I didn't know what she was yelling up to me though, but I was still groggy and not thinking straight. All I could think was that she must have been calling for me, or arguing with her boyfriend. So I got out of bed and went into the pitch black hall. I turned on the hallway lights and then made my way through the living room and heard my sister's voice again from downstairs. Now I could understand her to be saying my name. I made my way downstairs in the dark, yelling back at her, "What is it?" I looked for the light switch in the foyer downstairs, but couldn't find it. I'm not lying when I say I was groggy as hell. I walked down her little hallway towards her kitchen, find a light switch, and flick it on. The light in the kitchen lights up her little apartment, including her living room. The light starts off dim and needs time to brighten up, but I still saw that there was no one down there. Not her, not her boyfriend. I went to her bedroom, but it was empty. I called her name really loudly one time. No one called back. But shortly after I yelled, I heard something drop to the floor in my sister's bedroom, which I had just checked, and it was empty. I went back up the stairs like a little kid and went back to my bed to where my phone was. I tried to call her a few times, but she didn't pick up. I had myself locked in my room, wondering if I had just hallucinated all of that. Eventually I fell asleep, and in the morning I woke up to text from my sister asking why I called her at 1 a.m. I asked her if she was home last night, and she told me no, she was currently staying at her boyfriend's house. I went downstairs to her bedroom to see what may have fallen down on the floor, but there was not a single object on the floor that could have made that noise. I'm led to believe I hallucinated everything I heard that night, but that's what I want to believe, because the alternative would be much more horrific. But I've never really hallucinated anything else, or had any kind of sleep disorders, so how vividly I heard my sister's voice, and that sound in her room, really freaks me out. I was left home alone a lot as a kid, just due to the fact that my mom was single for a good chunk of my upbringing, and she worked as an RN on a crappy RN schedule, and my brother went away to college. This was a night that my mom was working an overnight. It was a weekend night, so I had this girl Molly over who I was talking to, and she hung out for a while. We watched a couple movies and whatnot, and eventually she had to go home because her parents don't like her out late, so I was left alone to hold down the fort. I continued to watch TV in my room and bed. My bedroom is upstairs next to the backyard, so when someone dragged one of the chairs on the deck outside, I heard it. I got up and looked out the window, and I saw someone sitting on one of the deck chairs down below. I called Molly's name thinking it was her. After all, she'd only left under 10 minutes ago. Whoever it was looked up at me, but it wasn't Molly. I immediately pulled away from the window to hide. That was not anybody I recognized. Not in the darkness, at least. I texted a few close friends in our group chat if it was one of them messing with me. The ones who answered all said no, and asked what I was talking about. I didn't really believe any of my friends would come to my house to mess with me like that anyway. Scared shitless, but still curious, I slowly walked back over to the window to look down again, and that person was still sitting in the chair, looking up at my window. It was a he, that much was clear, and he definitely saw me. I hurried away from the window again to turn off the TV. I sat in my bed in a ball basically, with my arms wrapped around my knees. I waited in darkness for a while. I didn't even want to turn my phone screen on because I was scared he'd see the light. I didn't even want to move because the window was opened and I feared that he'd hear any movement I made. I wanted him to assume I was just no longer in the bedroom. I waited enough time. It had to be a solid 5 minutes of just sitting there. I highly doubted that man outside could still be there. I finally mustered up the courage to get up and look out the window. I felt a little part of me die inside when I saw he was still down there, looking up at my window. Instead of running away from the window again, I tried to be brave and said down to him, "What do you want?" I then noticed his shoulders started to go up and down as if he were laughing really hard, but he didn't make any kind of audible laughing sounds at first, till I heard a slight whistling sound coming from him. It seemed like he was laughing so hard that he was wheezing. I asked him to please go away, then walked away from the window again. I went back to my bed. I was scared to call the police for some reason. I left my room and sat at the top of the stairway listening. The back door was being pushed. He was trying to get into the house. I ran back to my room to hide again. I was 14, I didn't know what else to do. Eventually I heard the front door's doorknob being fiddled with, and the man trying to push the front door open as well. He gave up quickly, thank God. I closed my bedroom window and curtains. If our doors weren't locked, I could have been killed easily. I was skinny and weak when I was 14 and definitely not a fighter. I didn't leave my room again that night until my mom got home around 9. I told her what happened, and her reaction was angry at me for not calling 911, and in hindsight that was very stupid of me. One of the many things I did, or rather didn't do at a young age, that I questioned greatly. This was the story of how I almost died as a young kid home alone, and possibly the most intense night of my life with way too much going on. We're a family of 5. I was 10 at the time. My older brother was 14, my little sister was 5. It was a Friday night. My brother was out with his friends causing trouble clearly, because a dreaded phone call came to my parents. All I remember was I was in my room playing a Star Wars video game when I heard my mom start freaking out crying. I got really scared and hurried to see what was wrong. My mom was on the phone with the hospital, calling to inform my parents that my brother had gotten hit by a car. Obviously, we were all shaken and really scared. My brother's leg was broken, but I don't know what else was said on the phone. All I know is my parents hurried to get their coats on and got my little sister from her room and asked me if I was okay to stay home alone. I said yes, and they hurried out to the car and left. I was of course really worried for my brother, but I really didn't want to go to the hospital and see him in any kind of bad condition. I don't think my parents wanted me or my sister to either, but they didn't want to leave my 5-year-old sister home without them. It's worth mentioning my brother recovered just fine, as his injury is no longer relevant to the story, other than it being the reason why I was left home alone on a Friday night. Before my dad left, he was trying to calm down my mom, telling her he was going to be okay. So seeing my dad like that made me feel better. I had a feeling my mom was just being overdramatic like any mom would be. I continued playing the Star Wars game for a couple more hours, when I heard the front door open. I had my bedroom door closed. By this point, it was easily past midnight and past my bedtime, so I turned off the TV and PlayStation and crawled into my bed with my Game Boy. I tried listening to hear my parents' voices, maybe hear if my brother was with them or just hear what they were saying, but I didn't hear anything. After a few minutes of not hearing them even come up the stairs, I had a feeling something was wrong. I went to my door and quietly opened it, then walked over to the ledge and banister that overlooked the living room. The lights were off, but there were 3 tall people standing in my living room. They weren't my family. I was so petrified that I was frozen for a second before I could quietly walk back into my room and shut the door as quietly as I could in my trepidation. But it wasn't quiet enough, and I knew it. They had to have heard the door click shut, even if just slightly. I hurried to my closet door, opened it quietly, stepped inside, then shut the door. I had myself sitting behind a bunch of the boxes and bags of clothes that were stuffed in my closet. I was actually pretty covered from view. There was this short period that felt like forever that I was anticipating my bedroom door open, and it did. And at that moment, I knew I was going to die. I heard footsteps walk into the room. I couldn't tell how many people. It may have been 1, it may have been 2. I heard the footsteps move to my bed, then I heard my covers being played with. Then silence, then more footsteps towards the closet door, then silence for a few seconds. And then the closet door opened. My heart was in my throat by this point. All I did was sit quietly and hold my breath. The door was open for a really long time, but I didn't look up. I didn't move. It had to be a good 20 seconds of silence before the door closed again. Footsteps walked away from the door, then out of the room. I finally looked up, and I just realized, from where I was crouched down behind the bags and boxes, I may have been visible to that person. It wasn't until probably an hour that I heard my parents return. I ran downstairs to them. The front door was left ajar by the people who broke in, and they had stolen a number of valuables from our house. It was a night that just went from bad to worse for our family. My parents were in such a rush when they left for the hospital that they apparently didn't even lock the door. I was lucky to have not been killed or kidnapped. I look back now and really wonder if the person who opened the closet and just stood there for 20 seconds saw me hiding in there. Maybe he was just a guy that came to rob a house, not to kidnap or hurt a child. Or maybe he just didn't see me, and I just narrowly escaped death or injury. I was home alone for an entire week one time when I was still a teenager living with my parents, which was a rare occasion since my parents don't go out a lot. My mom's rich friend Patty invited my parents on a trip that she was paying for. I'm an only child, so I was left alone in the house. We lived in Newark, Ohio, which is in Licking County. Yes, our county was actually called Licking County. My parents' old house had woods in the backyard and was on some quiet road that only a few cars would pass per day usually. We had a huge deck in the backyard overlooking the woods and a decently large backyard. We even had a little fish pond and above-ground swimming pool. This was on a Thursday night. I remember because I had conversations with friends about plans for the weekend that day. This was in July of 2013. I was out on the deck smoking weed with my speaker playing music. That's about the time it started. I thought I heard a voice from out in the woods. I lowered the music and listened for a little bit. It didn't repeat, so I raised it back up. When the music was loud again, I heard a voice from out in the woods again. This time I turned the music off completely and listened for longer. There was a voice calling from the woods again, confirming I wasn't just hearing things.
It was a male's voice, saying, "Hey, over here." He was kind of distant, but not too far. The woods were anywhere from 20 to 30 yards away from the deck, and that's where the voice was coming from. I didn't think in a million years it was someone calling out for me, though. Rather, maybe just some kids playing manhunt or something. The voice called out again, "Hey, over here, we need help." This time I realized the voice was too deep to be a kid. And when a voice yells out, "We need help," obviously that'll always be slightly concerning. I was getting a little bit uncomfortable now, because now I was questioning if these yells were directed at me. Now I heard the voice yell, "Straight in front of you, please come help us." And the voice was coming from straight in front of me in the woods. Now I had a feeling this was directed at me. I reluctantly called back, "Who is that?" And they responded, "We just need help, we're stuck in the woods." I called back, "What does that mean?" And the voice replied back, "Just please come help, straight in front of you." I got out from my seat, walked down the steps of the deck onto the grass, and proceeded towards the woods. I called out, "I'm coming, where are you?" The voice replied instantly, "Right in front of you, I see you." I replied back, "Wait, are you alone or with someone?" There was no answer this time. I stopped in my tracks about halfway towards the woods. I had a bad feeling in my gut about this. I started walking backwards, back towards the house and the deck. I didn't even want to turn my back to the woods, because it took me that long to realize there was something very suspicious about this situation. I made it back to the deck, and the voice didn't say anything else. If they truly saw me and this was real, they would have said something like, "Where are you going?" at the very least. They knew I was onto the situation, but who even knows how many people were in there? Could have been one, could have been three. All I know is getting stuck in the woods makes absolutely no sense, especially if he or they were able to literally see me. Like what? Did their shirt get caught on a branch? I went inside the house and locked all the doors just to be safe. I chilled in my living room for a bit, still high, and I think that's why I was more trusting at first, because of how high and relaxed I was. Then though, I heard the voice again from outside, closer now, definitely in the backyard and not the woods anymore. I heard splashing of water. It could have been the pool or the pond. I hurried to the window to see. I didn't see anyone at first, but then the voice called, "I see you," with a laugh. I noticed him. It was one guy, at least one guy visible. He was hidden behind the pool on the other side, and I could only see his head. It was just too dark to make out anything besides his dark, medium-length hair. I closed the blinds and tried to ignore it. Maybe he'd lose interest if he saw I wasn't entertaining him. He was probably a sick, deranged person who enjoyed messing with people, so I didn't want to give him what he wanted. But my breaking point was when there was a horrible, aggressive banging on the window where I had just closed the blinds, and on the other side, the guy was screaming help. I screamed at the top of my lungs to "Fuck off, you freak, the police are coming." I screamed it over and over, trying to make myself sound crazier than him. I heard him start to laugh on the other side of the glass. His laughing started to fade away as I assume he walked away. I sat back down on the couch, trembling, shaking, out of breath. I sat there for a while, and it seemed like the guy had really given up. I still got a good night's sleep that night because weed helps me sleep. I wonder if I would have handled that situation any differently if I wasn't high though. The situation made me more paranoid about who I opened my door to. I'm 23 years old, and I live at home with my parents still. One day they were both not home, and I was outside playing basketball in the front yard. At some point while I was playing, I looked up at one of our upstairs windows and saw a woman standing there. Not my mom, not my sister. It was a random woman. I guess when she saw me looking at her, she dipped away from the window. When I went inside and upstairs to check the lounge room, she wasn't anywhere. I checked every single room I could, every bedroom, the bathroom, every closet. Then I checked the downstairs, which included the living room, kitchen, dining room, one bedroom, and more closets. Finally, I checked the basement, and I highly doubted she could be down there. It's a small basement with a couple couches, a bar, and 2 closets. There weren't many places for someone to hide, but when I opened the second closet door, I was incredibly scared, as I didn't know of any other places someone could be hiding in the house. This was the last unchecked spot that I could think of. I yanked the door open as if I were ripping off a band-aid, and like I did with the closet before this one, I right away pushed myself into the closet just in case that woman was in there and I'd have the jump on her. But all I pushed myself into was a bunch of coats and coat hangers. I was so confused. I wasn't going to question my sanity though. I definitely saw that woman and I knew it. It wasn't the kind of thing you would just so vividly imagine. I went back to the middle floor and screamed very loud that whoever was in the house needs to get the F out. I actually screamed so loud that our next door neighbor came over and asked if I was okay. I told him that I literally just saw a woman at our upstairs window watching me play basketball. He came in and helped me search again. When we couldn't find her, I was left to assume that she snuck out through the back door, which I did unlock after all when I went to grab the basketball from the yard. So my neighbor left. I locked all the doors, called my parents, and told them the crazy story, and they weren't too thrilled. But they asked me to make sure nothing was stolen. I did just that, and luckily it seemed anything that was worth something was still in place. So now fast forward to that night. I went to sleep after checking the house one more time just for peace of mind. It was hard to fall asleep though. My mind was racing for obvious reasons. Most people can't relate to seeing a stranger at their window inside of their house. But my restlessness helped me out in this situation, and here's why. I was finally starting to drift away slightly. Then I heard some noises from the other side of me. I had the fan on above me, so the room wasn't dead silent, and that's why I didn't immediately turn to my other side at the first sound I heard. But the sound started to sound human-like. I turned to my other side, and there she was, getting out from under my bed. She stood up tall above the bed, and I screamed so loud, louder than earlier before. I jumped out of my bed and tackled her to the floor and had my hand around her throat, asking her who she was. My doorbell rang, my neighbor again. I picked the tall, dirty-looking woman up off the floor and dragged her to the front door with me as she struggled and scratched at me. I still have 2 scars on my right arm from her claws. I opened my front door to my neighbor again, and he let himself in and helped me restrain the woman. This was when I called the police. The whole time we waited for the police, the woman was screaming and cursing at my neighbor and I, threatening us too. The best way to put it, she looked and acted like a meth head currently suffering from withdrawals. When the police arrived, one of the officers knew exactly who the woman was. They had dealt with her multiple times before. Her name was conveniently Karen. It was satisfying to watch her be brought into the back of the police car. I let my neighbor know how grateful I was for him coming so quickly to help. And that night, my mind continued to race. But instead of being completely freaked out, which I still was a little, I felt this overwhelming feeling of satisfaction. And I can't fully explain why.
I started at 16 in my town in the suburbs of a big city. At first, they put me to help the chef in the kitchen and clean the place and stuff. 2 months later, my boss told me that on the days off of the main delivery boy, I would deliver, and I said yes, of course. Then all of a sudden, the delivery boy quit when he came from delivering a pizza at this one house. He looked traumatized and shaken, like something with his face and his eyes. He went into my boss's office and they argued for about 15 minutes. Then he came out and said, "Good luck, kid," then told me he had quit. I asked why and he said, "Just a shitty job, that's all." He then patted me on the back and left. I knew it was something else than just a shitty job, but I didn't think much of it. That was the last time I saw him. So for the next couple of weeks, I was the delivery boy till they could find someone that can deliver pizzas. About 2 weeks into me delivering pizzas, my boss gave me the address to a house, and as usual I put in the GPS and went over. Watching the sunset while driving over there, I was hoping it'd take 2 minutes tops so I could get home. Unfortunately, it was in the rural side of town, where the houses are like a quarter mile from each other. I stopped in front of the 2-floor house and looked at it. I got the creepiest feels when I stared at it. Lawn not cut, with weeds, dead trees, and the old porch with no chairs or flower pots or tables, just plain. It seemed abandoned, but I got out anyways and knocked on the door. I was hoping my boss gave me the wrong address or something so I could get the hell out of there. Then the door lock started to shake and the door opened. It was an old lady, at least 70 years old or something around there, with white hair, teeth missing, and skinny, very short too, but her eyes just glaring at me. It really freaked me out. I figured if I was nice, things would turn out okay after all. "Pepperoni pizza, ma'am?" I said as friendly as I could. "Yes," she said with a hoarse voice as if she had a sore throat. "Alrighty, here you go." I handed the pizza over, but she just looked at it with no emotion and didn't take it, getting her purse. "Did you come with someone else?" I froze, then quickly looked up at her, still glaring at me. That question really frightened me. No," I said. "Where's the other one? He ran off on me last time he came." Ran off, I thought. It didn't make sense. "He quit some weeks ago," I said. Then she got her purse and started searching for money, or so I thought. She did for about a minute, the longest minute ever, and with the hands in her purse, she stopped and looked at me, not in a look of surprise or in confusion, but just like as if she was thinking really hard on something. I could tell she was holding something in her right hand inside the purse, but I couldn't see what. I really started to freak out at this point. What if it was pepper spray, or a knife, or even a gun? I mean, what could take her so long to get $10 out of her purse? Then, behind her, I saw a shadow. A silhouette of a man coming to the door, and all of a sudden, I heard footsteps crushing the leaves on my left side next to the porch, and a man's deep voice saying, "Hey." I looked over and saw a head of a middle-aged man with a look of anger peeking over the porch. This guy then started to climb the porch, and that was when I realized I had enough. I darted to my car, threw the pizza inside, turned it on, and drove off. I didn't look back as I drove off in the dark. I had to lie and pay for the pizza out of my own pocket, but it was worth it. On the day I quit, I decided to tell my boss what happened that evening, to which he freaked out as well and asked me why I hadn't told him. He said James told him something like he just walked out of there and didn't pay attention to her. My boss then called the cops to look into the sketchy situation, and he told me I could leave. About 2 days later, he called back, saying the cops had the house registered as foreclosed for over a year, and they found 3 people living in there when they broke in, which were 2 men and the old lady I encountered. They were arrested, and he didn't tell me anything else. I'm still traumatized, and I don't know what would have happened if I would have waited. They could have easily jumped me, but thank God I quit afterwards, and I'm still alive. I'll never forget the time I was covering my friend's shift at a pizzeria we worked at. He was the delivery boy, while I was usually the one manning the register. On that night, I made 2 real deliveries to normal people. Then, my manager gave me one final delivery for the night. It was 5 miles away, which was a long drive for what I was used to. The GPS told me to turn off the highway into some very quiet town. Somehow, I'd never even heard of this town. The GPS took me down some side roads that were even more dead than the main streets in this town. Half of the street lights weren't even on. I didn't like the looks of this place. I just wanted to deliver the pizza and be gone. So I arrived to the house. It was a single-floor little thing. I rang the bell, and almost immediately the door swung open. There was an older man, maybe in his upper 50s, that opened the door. His few hairs left on his head were gray, and he had a very pale face with a gray mustache. He gave me a smile and told me he'd be right back. He walked away into his house out of view, and I just stood there in the cold, waiting for him. I was a little uncomfortable with the area, and the looks of the guy answering didn't help. The sound of stomping on the creaky floors inside the house came to the door as the man appeared back in the doorway with a smile. He said I should come inside where it's warm while I waited. I told him it's okay, but he just started nudging for me to come inside. I cannot justify my actions, but it was like 5 degrees outside. I foolishly stepped inside the sketchy stranger's house. He shut the door behind me and stepped off into another room in a hurry. It wasn't even much warmer in the house. He clearly didn't even have a heating system. I found myself creeping closer and closer to the door as I got more uncomfortable. Then, the man came out of another room and gave me another smile. He opened up a door, apparently leading to the basement. He looked down and told me that he normally leaves his money down there. He asked me to come down there with him, but I refused. Even from where I was standing, I could see it was totally pitch dark down there. And then, what happened next is where it all fell apart. I heard the sound of a creaking step coming from the basement. Somebody else was down there. I decided it was time to go and turned around to open the door, but the man was already right on top of me. I punched him in the face and managed to get him in a hold, but I heard somebody stomping up the basement steps, and I had to get out of there. I pushed the man to the floor, ran outside, got in my car, and drove off without looking back. I told my manager everything, and he called the cops, but I don't know whatever became of that. My manager gave me a couple days off afterwards. Since then, I am much wiser to the fact that you should never enter a stranger's house. I was out doing a delivery one late night. It was probably the longest drive I had ever taken for a pizza delivery. From the pizza place I worked at, it was a 20-minute drive, which isn't too crazy out where I live. Plus, they ordered 4 large pies, so I figured it was a party and I would get a much bigger tip. Navigating the dirt roads at night was always annoying though. I pulled up to the given address. It was some old, sketchy-looking building literally in the middle of a forest clearing. There were no cars parked anywhere or any lights on. I put my car in park and called my boss. I asked him to reread the address at least 3 times to make sure I typed it in right, but that checked out. I could tell he was in a really bitchy mood, and he told me to at least knock on the door and check it out. He would normally get mad if we took back 1 pie, but I was afraid of what he would do if I brought back 4. I was insanely unnerved, but got out anyway and forced myself to the front door of the building. There was no doorbell, so I just knocked really hard. I heard nothing and didn't really expect to hear anything. I was extremely disappointed, not because nobody answered the door, but because I was realizing that it was all a waste of time and gas. I knocked 1 more time out of desperation, and then began to hear some kind of rustling noises from inside of the building. I knocked again and yelled that I was the pizza guy. There was silence now. I felt a bit more uncomfortable now than before. But before I could turn around, I noticed something at the window. There was someone looking through the window. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. All I noticed were their eyes. Their eyes were open wider than I knew possible, staring intently at me. I was disturbed enough by this and dropped the pizzas and ran back to my car. The shitty thing wouldn't start until turning the key for the 3rd time. I drove off the grass and back onto the dirt road, but I felt the car rocking about, shaking and bumping. Something wasn't right. I didn't make it far from the building before I started hearing a sharp scraping sound coming from outside. There was so much resistance that I couldn't even drive. The car came to a stop. I got out of the car to check what the hell was wrong. A chill ran up my spine as I began to feel like my heart was constantly skipping beats. My tires had been slashed and had completely fallen off the rim. Not just the front though. All 4 tires were slashed. I realized somebody did this when I was knocking on the door to that building. Instead of running, I got back in the car and locked the doors. I was so close to that building, I could practically see it from where I was, if it weren't for the trees blocking the view. I dialed 911 and explained everything to the operator. She told me the cops would be over as soon as possible and that I need to stay hidden. I asked her if it was advisable to stay in the car or run, and she told me it would be best to stay in the car with the door locked. She asked me to stay on the line with her until the cops arrived. My whole body was shaking. In all directions, there was nothing but dark, seemingly endless forest. I knew it would take forever for the cops to get there. I was not comfortable with sitting in that car so close to whoever did this. The next part, though, is what utterly destroyed me. It still shakes me to this day, and I hope nobody ever has to experience this kind of fear. As I was scanning all the windows, making sure nobody was outside, I looked in the rearview mirror, and there was the same person I saw at that window. Eyes open wider than ever. I could see now that it was a woman, and I could ever so slightly see a smile begin to spread across her face. I opened my door and full-on sprinted into the woods, not caring how much noise I made. I ran until I was out of breath, which didn't take long, and I hid behind a giant log on the ground. I tried to cover my loud breathing with my hand, as I waited and waited for what felt like hours, until I finally heard sirens in the distance. I gathered up all the stamina I had left to run all the way back in the direction of the dirt road. Eventually, the glowing red and blue lights came into view, and I had never felt better in my life. They were parked in front of my car, investigating with flashlights. I came out yelling at them like a lunatic to help me. I fell to the floor and started to gag, almost throwing up from running so much. They picked me up and began to question me, to which I explained everything to the best of my ability. One of the 2 cars drove over to the building, and the 2 officers began to search the building. They came back with nothing except for a couple of spiky objects. These objects were exactly the same as the ones used to slash my tires. The cops guessed that it was some kind of sick, demented couple, being that I saw the woman, but unfortunately they were never found, and that still kills me to this day. I obviously quit my job right after that and started working at a local grocery store. I know that I'll never forget seeing that woman at the back of my car.
Sean Grates stalked northern Ohio between 2006 and 2016, slaughtering women after assaulting them. He's now on death row awaiting execution, thanks to one would-be victim's bravery. The following 911 call you're about to hear is of that would-be victim and is possibly one of the most tense 911 calls you'll ever hear. On September 13th, 2016, Ashland police received a phone call from an unknown woman who police referred to as Jane Doe, who whispered that she had been kidnapped and was tied up mere feet away from her sleeping abductor. She tried to describe the man who was holding her captive and the house she was in. The best she could manage was that it was next to the 4th Street laundromat.
What is the address to your emergency?
By the 4th Street laundromat.
What is it?
4th 4th Street Laundromat.
What's the problem?
I've been abducted.
Who abducted you?
Sean Green.
You said John Green?
Sean Great.
Where's he at now?
Asleep.
Where's he sleeping at?
In the bedroom.
In what bedroom?
There's 2 houses right by the Laundry Street. And it's in one of those houses.
What color's the house?
Yellow. Please hurry.
Is it an apartment?
No, it's a house.
Okay, does he own the house?
No, he broke into it.
Does anybody actually live there?
I think they've been abandoned.
Does he have a weapon?
He's got a taser.
Are you injured?
A little.
Where did he take you from?
My apartment. I was walking with him.
You were walking with him?
Mm-hmm.
Where were you walking to?
I've known him for like a month and a half.
Is there any way you can get out of the building?
I don't know without waking him, and I'm scared.
Is there a bathroom in the house?
Well, his bedroom is closed, and he made it so it would make noise.
And if you told him you had to go to the bathroom, he would do something to you?
Yeah, because he had me tied up.
So are you tied up now?
Well, yeah, but I kind of freed myself.
Is he in the same room with you?
Yes.
Are you bleeding from anywhere?
Not anymore. Oh, shit. I woke him up.
You just set the phone down.
While the 911 dispatcher continued talking the caller through escaping, Jane accidentally knocked over her captor's taser, waking him. The line went dead briefly, and she was suddenly minutes away from being the 6th victim of the serial killer Sean Great. And by this point, the police knew they had to race if they wanted any chance of saving the helpless woman. Great sat up in his bed and stared at the floor, before laying back down again, not realizing that Jane was on the phone with the police.
Are you still there?
How much longer?
What?
How much longer?
Do you hear any officers outside?
No.
Okay, they're in the area. Can you get out of the house?
Locked.
It's locked. Are you at the door?
Yeah, I am.
She's at the door.
What?
She's at the door on the right side of the house. She got out of the bedroom. Is there a window there?
Yeah, I'm looking out and they tell me to come back.
She said
Hurry.
she said to hurry up and come back.
Yeah, they can see me if they
It's
come
locked.
to it.
The door is locked.
Come on out. Hurry up. Get out of here. Where is he?
Bedroom sleeping.
Still sleeping?
Yeah.
Okay, they have her.
He went unarmed.
Unarmed?
Yeah.
Well, if you can't be in there, here, cover yourself up. Tell me what happened. What happened?
Their rescue of the woman and arrest of Great was heard on the call. Thankfully, the woman survived this ordeal, though likely not without having some lasting scarring effects on her. As a teenager growing up in Marion, Ohio, Sean Great was well liked, particularly by girls. He had a charm about him that would mask his inner rage, at least for a while. When he was 18, he was arrested for grabbing his then-girlfriend by the throat. A few years later, he was arrested for breaking into his 17-year-old girlfriend's home and choking her, and only 8 months later, he broke into the same girl's house again, this time slipping underneath her couch and hiding until he saw an opportunity to strike. This time he had a butcher knife in hand. But Great's charm and artificial friendliness allowed him to go on and have 3 children with 3 different women, but his inner anger would never lay dormant for long. His ex-wife, Amber Nicole Bowman, claims that Sean at one point said, "If I can't see my daughter, no one will." By his mid to late 20s, Great's behavior became more erratic. He would begin dating Christina Hildreth. The pair were happy and content in the beginning, but Great couldn't hide his true colors for long. Not only did he become violent, controlling, and jealous, he would also show signs of being cold and indifferent towards his confused girlfriend, and would eventually end up physically abusing her.
So was he violent with you?
Yes.
In what way?
He broke my hand, blacked my eye, strangled me, tied me up.
But his hostility would soon extend beyond just romantic partners, and even to friends, when he asked his friend for a loan, which was declined, and in response, he sent his friend a disturbing text saying, "Meet the other me." Eventually, Great would find himself living in Mansfield, hopping from woman to woman, and around this time, he met his first two victims, Rebecca Lisi and Candace Cunningham. Rebecca was a sex worker, and her body was found in March 2015. Her death was ruled an overdose originally, but Great later pleaded guilty to her murder. Candace Cunningham lived with Great in Mansfield before her disappearance in 2015. Police couldn't find her until the day of Great's arrest, when he led police to her body, which was lying behind a burned-down house in Richland County on the day of his arrest. Great managed to somehow become even more barbaric towards his next and final victim, Jane, who you heard in the phone call just before. Jane met Sean Great around her apartment complex, and he eventually gained her trust. That was when he exposed her to his true self. He trapped her in an abandoned house and forced her to endure days of torture and other unspeakable things while she was tied up. Great barely slept on the first night of his victim's capture, giving her no chance of escape. However, after another day of torture, Great eventually passed out. His phone was right next to him going off, but he was seemingly in a very deep sleep. So Jane took this opportunity as her likely last chance to escape alive, and she reached over his sleeping body as stealthily as she could to pick up the phone and dialed 911 while still partially bound. And that was the start of the 911 call. When police arrived at the property, they were met with more bodies than they'd expected. Great had been mercilessly killing the women who were unfortunate enough to trust him, and some of them were decomposing in the house he was squatting in. The 911 operator received a lot of hate and ridicule over her loud voice and constant seemingly unnecessary questions during the call, as many people believe she could have very easily led to Great being awoken, either by the sound of her voice or because of all the questions she was making Jane answer. Thankfully, things went the way they did, and this 911 call was a very fortunate story, as it got a monster off the streets who no doubt wouldn't have stopped doing what he was doing. The call you're about to hear was made by millionaire James Bob Ward, reporting that he had just shot his wife. His tone throughout the call is very monotone, calm, and nonchalant considering the matter for which he's making the call. The real estate mogul claims he walked into his and his wife's room to turn in for the night, and was shocked to find his allegedly depressed and intoxicated 51-year-old wife, Diane, holding his Magnum handgun. Bob says the weapon accidentally discharged while he was struggling to get it away from her before she could kill herself or him, or the both of them. This was the call.
Yeah, what's the emergency?
I just shot my wife.
You just what?
I just shot my wife.
Where's your wife?
She's right here on the floor. Please send somebody at 5277 Iowa Country Club Drive.
Okay, what's going on there?
I just shot my wife.
You just shot your wife?
I shot my wife. Yes, please send somebody over.
Stay on my woman. Let me add the fire department. Don't hang up.
I will.
Where's the weapon at, sir?
Orange County Fire Rescue. The address of your emergency?
44.
5277 Iowa Country Club Drive.
On there.
I just shot my wife.
Okay, where's the weapon?
It's in
Is that where
the,
she found?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Where, is she breathing?
No, she's dead.
You know that for sure.
I think so, yes.
Okay, sir, where is the weapon?
It's in the nightstand next to the bed in the master bedroom. And I'll be glad to meet the officers at the front door.
Where is your wife, sir?
She's on the floor in the master bedroom.
How old is she?
Born in 1954.
Okay, you're sure she's not breathing or?
She's dead. She's done. I'm sorry.
Sir, did you purposely do this?
No,
Or was it an accident?
it was an accident.
How long ago did this happen, sir?
Probably 5 minutes ago. I'm on the front steps.
You're out on the front steps?
Yeah, I'm on the front steps.
Okay.
And leaving the front gate, come on the front steps, we'll go upstairs and go find Diane. Yeah, they're passing. You told me back up.
Did you see the deputy?
Yeah, I see lights, but they're somewhere back up. Ask them back up. Hey, guys, over here. Over here. Guys, over here. Hey, you're on the phone. I'm making the phone stop. No, I got him on the phone. We're good.
We can hang up with him. Okay.
Bob was charged with second-degree murder of Diane. He has always claimed the gun went off when he was trying to get it away from Diane, but prosecutors believe the two were arguing over financial problems, and that's why Bob shot her. Now it was up to a jury to decide, but to this day the question is, was Diane Ward's death really just a tragic accident, or did her husband Bob murder her in cold blood? Well, not too long ago, a significant discovery of a letter from the grave may finally answer the question that's confounded the justice system and haunted the Ward family since the day Diane died. Bob and Diane had it all, a happy 26-year-old marriage, 2 daughters, and enough money to own numerous luxurious estates in several states. Daughters Sarah and Mallory say they and their parents were a loving, tight-knit family. But eventually, Bob's real estate empire collapsed under the weight of the Great Recession, and even though Bob was facing bankruptcy, his daughters claimed he remained optimistic. But not Diane, who grew increasingly low-spirited over the prospect of losing the family fortune. Sarah said her mother vainly tried to ease her depression with booze and prescription drugs, and that she would turn into a different person far from the loving mom she knew, and completely out of control even in public. She said her mother was also directing all her anger and resentment at her father, after having to cut back on some of the luxuries the family grew used to, and Sarah says her father was like her mother's punching bag. Bob's defense attorneys painted Diane as a suicidal and unstable person, and in 2018, his defense attorneys produced new evidence. A suicide note written by Diane was found in the couple's Atlanta home. It was reportedly found by an estate sales professional in the closet in the master bedroom. She stated that she was on a ladder in a small closet in the bedroom when she noticed a pink notebook next to some hair rollers. She opened the notebook and found a note and some cards with Diane Ward printed on them. The alleged suicide note read, "Dear Mallory and Sarah, please know how much I love you. I don't know how it happened for me to end up like this. I want you to have wonderful lives and know that I will always be watching out for both of you. Take care of Daddy. I love you more than you will ever know. Take care of the dogs, they will need you." Defense attorneys claim that a former FBI handwriting expert could testify that he thinks the handwriting is indeed that of Diane Ward. So this all begs the question, is what Bob says true? Was his shooting of his wife an accident? But if this were the case, Bob's calm and seemingly unaffected tone over the phone with 911, and even during his police interrogation, wouldn't make much sense.
Then you're doing it rather
Any
than...
reading glasses anybody has?
Sure. Thank
you so much. Thank you.
I have my pair.
Thank you.
I may
I have a folding pair, but I think they took them. Thank you.
Oh.
Well, like I said, I'm Detective Frost. I didn't get your name, your first name.
I go by Bob.
Okay.
But it's James Robert.
It would be a safe assumption that anyone who just accidentally murdered their wife would show any kind of remorse or regret, but Bob was calm and seemingly unaffected throughout. He's still in prison today. This last one has been circulating the internet for decades, and you've likely heard it before. In fact, I've included it in a video I privated many years ago. I'm sure some of you remember. But new information has arisen on this call recently.
This is Ruth Price of 3877. What's the problem, ma'am? Oh, there's some guy been checking the place out. Oh. Well, he went in the back. I have an apartment in the back, and he said he was looking for a guy. And he comes to my door, and said he's looking for an apartment. So I live alone, and I'm an old lady. Mm-hmm. Where is he now, ma'am? I don't have no idea.
For the longest time,
This phone call was commonly just referred to as things like old woman murdered during 911 call. For a long time, people speculated that this call is just a hoax or a choreographed recording for 911 operator training. Eventually, though, the woman's name was revealed to be Ruth Price, and it was learned that the call was in fact real. However, the internet was still having a hard time gathering any further information on this Ruth Price woman, or what her fate was after the phone call. The unfortunate assumption that she was murdered shortly after this call was always the go-to assumption. At the beginning of the call, Ruth begins to give her address as 3877, but is cut off by the 911 operator. During this 911 call, Ruth presents herself as an elderly woman who's concerned about a man who knocks on her door saying he's looking for an apartment. Ruth pauses after giving this information. Then you hear a blood-curdling scream, and Ruth says something about not being able to breathe. Recently, though, information as to who this Ruth Price woman was finally surfaced. Ruth Mildred Starr was born in Pueblo, Colorado on December 7, 1913. Ruth went to Central High School in Pueblo, Colorado, and this was her yearbook photo. Ruth's obituary was recently found, which shows that she died in 1994 in the San Diego Union-Tribune. Ruth was also mentioned in a newspaper section called Assaults on November 3, 1980 in the San Diego Evening-Tribune. In this newspaper clipping, it says Ruth M. Price was assaulted on the 3800 block of 35th Street.
This is Ruth Price of 3877.
This newspaper clipping which you see here fits the Ruth Price 911 call perfectly. It wasn't a hoax, and it wasn't a 911 training call. That blood-curdling scream was unfortunately very real. But fortunately, even in Ruth's old age, she managed to fight off her attacker and live for another 14 years. What seems like a realistic possibility now is that this call was used to shock trainees for 911 call taking because of how blood-curdling and disturbing her panicked screaming was, and thus was born the legend of an old woman brutally murdered while on the phone with 911. At least this story had a much happier ending than originally thought.